if you ever look up symptoms of stress, you probably would find many, and they seem to be very non-specific, which can cause even more stress to you. But let us break it down systematically. We can see the manifestations of stress as physical and emotional. In our bodies, we can feel tired, tense, sweaty. We may also experience dizziness, headaches, breathlessness, tummy upsets, and palpitations. Our moods can also range from anger to moodiness to restlessness. Stress can also affect our daily lives in ways like disturbing our sleep and making us less interested in things we would normally enjoy. Now let us take a closer look at how these manifestations come about. First, we know stress as the stimulus. We know that stimuli get processed in the brain, which then sends a whole chain reaction of responses. Let us look more closely. Let us imagine signals being sent to the brain to tell it that the body is facing stress. Stress has a heavy emotional component to it, so it gets processed by the amygdala first. Being the first response in sounding the distress signal to the body, this emotional processing occurs at a subconscious level. The emotions felt are very much like on autopilot mode and out of our control. This signal subsequently activates the hypothalamus. Think of the hypothalamus as a commander of the major operation that is about to take place. It controls both the automatic responses of nerves and hormone responses of the endocrine system. Hypothalamus activates the autonomic nervous system, specifically the sympathetic nervous system. The activation of the sympathetics affects namely the respiratory and the cardiovascular systems. Remember Anthony from the first video? He had increased respiratory rate and increased heart rate. This sympathetic activation can also increase blood pressure and trigger sweating. The sympathetic activation also triggers the adrenal glands to release stress hormones, adrenaline and noradrenaline for the fight or flight response. Let us zoom into the endocrine or hormonal system now. Back to Commander Hypothalamus. He sends out hormones to reach his good friend and neighbor, pituitary gland. The pituitary then releases hormones to tell the adrenal glands to secrete steroids. This is known as the hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis, which is the HPA axis. Besides the autonomic nervous system and endocrine system being affected, we know that stress has an effect on our mental health as well. The initial processing by the amygdala and thereafter the hypothalamus all take place at a subconscious level and very quickly to help the body immediately respond to any threats. It's similar to a knee-jerk reaction. We only realize after it has happened. This after-effect realization is done by the cerebral cortex, which has more conscious functions and processes emotions at higher levels. We can see things in the brain this way. The amygdala processes emotions subconsciously. The hypothalamus then triggers the body's responses through the nerves and hormones, while the cerebral cortex processes thoughts and emotions at higher levels. We can see how the processes of all three are interlinked. The emotional aspect provides the impetus to both the bodily responses and thoughts. The body's processes that take place can exaggerate our emotional response, and the emotional responses can hijack our thoughts when negative thoughts come on automatically, making something non-threatening seem threatening. Each of them will reinforce one another, resulting in physical, mental, emotional, and behavioral changes in a person. What's concerning is when someone falls into the pits of chronic stress. In chronic stress, there's a degree of conditioning where neural circuits and pathways are being established after we face stress. Different stimuli can also reinforce these circuits in our brain. An example is when a performer faces stress during his first performance. Subsequently, a stimulus such as the mention of a performance can trigger the symptoms and chain response of stress. Remember the activation of the sympathetic nervous system and endocrine system? Think about what happens when your heart rate and blood pressure keeps being elevated. or where there is cortisol circulating around at higher levels all the time. There's an increased risk of developing long-term physical health conditions such as headaches and muscle pains due to constant tense muscles, cardiovascular diseases such as high blood pressure and heart diseases, gut problems like stomach ulcers, metabolic diseases such as diabetes and obesity, immune problems like infections as our immune systems can be weakened. Females may also experience menstrual problems such as missing periods. The health of the mind suffers as well. Remember the autopilot we talked about? The mind has a tendency to go on autopilot. This is its natural state. We experience automatic thoughts, where our mind wanders and thoughts pop up involuntarily. We are often hardly aware that the mind has wandered. Have you ever tried to focus on something where your mind just goes everywhere except the very thing you want to focus on? If you recall Kelly from the first video, she had many thoughts that were triggered by that first thought of her exams, and together, all these thoughts made her grow more and more anxious. She was also unable to sleep well because of these thoughts and feelings. Even though automatic thoughts are not always negative and harmful, if we constantly wander down that dark alley when we're triggered by stress, our minds are then filled with these negative subconscious thoughts and feelings. In the long term, with all these persisting and overwhelming somebody, it then increases their risk of developing anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorders, and sleep disorders. The long-term processing of stress can be summarized as the general adaptation syndrome, which is stress adaptation over time occurring in 3 stages. It starts with the alarm reaction, which is the acute or immediate stress response. The next stage is resistance, where the body tries to resist stress and restore homeostasis before the next stressful event happens. However, in the event where stress events keep occurring, the body depletes its resources to cope with stress and starts to break down. This last stage is known as exhaustion, and it's our hope that less people will reach this stage. All the physical and mental effects as a response to stress can produce constructive or destructive behavior in a person as a result. We see that the body, mind, and person's behavior are all interconnected. So what can we do? In our next video, we'll study different strategies to manage and cope with stress constructively.